The last time Aston Martin launched a V8-engined Vantage, it was 2005 and the firm was still part of Ford's short-lived Premier Automotive Group. Any long-serving employee will tell you that much has changed in the ensuing decade, not least the ambitious turnover of its new and future lineup, and yet the template provided by the previous Vantage still dictates much that is good and right and true about its replacement. As before, the Vantage is a front-mid engine layout. There's still a V8 in the nose, albeit a turbocharged one, powering a transaxle at the back, albeit it with an Ediff, meaning the weight distribution is as equitable as a brimmed bathtub. The Vantage is still mostly made of aluminium as well, the chassis bonded together in that inimitable way that Gaydon finds so agreeable. Then there is the look. The outgoing Vantage is arguably the bedrock on which the modern iteration of Aston Martin is built. Partly because it is the biggest-selling, and therefore best-known, model, and partly because its unforced handsomeness and sporting heft has helped define the brand's values for a customer base which might have otherwise chosen Porsche or latterly Jaguar. Aston talk about it being the purest model. Marek Reichman, the firm's chief creative officer, told PH its replacement had to be simple, but incredibly dramatic. And whether you like it or not, the amalgamation of Vulcan and DB10 is undeniably striking. From the lead-adorned ducktail spoiler to the knee-high prow, the car is about a single, swan dive line down the flank, which is about as elemental as contemporary car design gets. Consequently, no active aero elements are permitted. Part of the reason for that violently upswept deck lid is that no rear wing was considered acceptable. The Vantage's downforce instead juggled between the front splitter, a mostly flat underside, and the substantial diffuser. The overhangs meanwhile are shrink-wrapped around the shorter wheelbase, which helps to explain why the car is 284 mm shorter than a DB11 and 34 mm shorter than a 911. While it is based on the same next-generation architecture as its bigger sibling, Aston suggests that 70% of its components are bespoke, a satisfyingly ample proportion, and easily big enough to squash flat the notion that Gaydon is indulging in the same Russian doll process which previously made the lineup hard to tell apart. In a single stroke, the new Vantage sweeps such concerns aside. It won't drive anything like the DB11 either. Laudably, Aston has not minced its words in that regard. The coupe is intended as a thoroughbred sports car, a pure driving machine, Andy Palmer calls it. Adaptive damping is standard on a front double wishbone, rear multi-link suspension setup, but the manufacturer is pointedly not pursuing GT levels of suppleness. That's what the DB11 is. For the Vantage is about engagement, verve and enjoyment. To that end, Gaydon has solidly mounted the car's rear subframe for better rigidity and wrestled its dry weight down to 1,530 kilograms. That'll make it heavier than a rear-drive 911 against the cub, but Aston has addressed any power-to-weight concerns by generously tipping the scales with a 510 horsepower and 505 pounds FT variant of Mercedes-Benz twin-turbo 4.0-litre V8. Naturally, the unit also shared with the DB11 is the result of the ongoing relationship between the two firms, ditto the migration of a host of electrical systems, not least the Vantage's infotainment. But Max SZWAJ, Aston's chief technical officer, assured us that the engine has been remapped for its deployment in the latest model, which extends to a comprehensive retuning of the V8's exhaust note. Plainly, the quality of the soundtrack will be fundamental, although if it's on par with the car's claimed performance, we're probably in for a treat. At 3.6 seconds to 62 miles per hour, the new V8 Vantage is not only quicker than the old V12 model, but also a hair's breadth quicker than a PDK-equipped Porsche 911 GTS. The Aston gets an 8-speed ZF automatic as standard. A manual box will follow later and will ultimately hit 195 miles per hour. While the transmission is notable for its revised ratios again, compared to those used in the DB11, Gaydon is pitching the car's new Ediff as the real game-changer. The Vantage is the first Aston Martin to benefit from the increasingly familiar alternative to a purely mechanical solution, the obvious benefit being its ability to go from fully open to 100% locked in milliseconds. Its lack of parameters make it uniquely adjustable, and therefore acutely influential on the car's handling, in particular the heightened sense of agility that Aston feels is critical to a model of the Vantage's. size and bent. Moreover, the differential's response is intrinsically linked to both dynamic torque vectoring and the car's stability control system, meaning that the engineers have endeavored to deliver more engagement in slow and medium corners, and greater stability in high-speed ones. Much of course will depend on which drive mode you've indulged the Vantage, giving you the choice of Sport, Sport Plus and Track, although the dampers can be adjusted exclusively. The steering too is now electrically powered and ought to be suitably quick at 2.4 turns Loctolic. Unequivocally, all this circuitry qualifies the new model as a digitized replacement for what was once a primordially aspirated and mechanically driven machine, but Gaydon's insistent rhetoric about the sort of Vantage it is building suggests that car's famously fearsome setup will not have been lost in the next generation rush to compete with everything from a Jaguar F-Type SVR to a McLaren 540c. If nothing else, that class of competitor is dictated by the proportions of the price tag, the new Vantage starting at £120,900, while the previous entry-level car started considerably further back, it being a close rival for middling 911 variants. Aston Martin will feel confident that it has read both the market and its own luxury brand cash to perfection. Well, obviously defer judgment until we drive the car in the spring, although it's fair to say that the excitement surrounding that event speaks volumes about the Vantage's reception. Inspired by an Aston Martin, the V8 Vantage here. Specification: Aston Martin Vantage engine 3982cc, twin-turbo V8 transmission, 8-speed Ediff automatic, rear-wheel drive, power HP 510 at 6000 rpm, torque pound-feet 505 at 2,0005000 rpm, 062 mph, 3.6 sec, top speed 195 mph, weight 1,530 kg, dry weight including lightweight options MPG 26.8 NEDC combined co 2,245 GKM, price £120,900.